Allora, sorry, I have to speak English because my Italian is very lousy. As my predecessors already said, this exhibition, the World Exhibition, is for you, is not for us. It's not for those who come from time to time. It's for you, for Milano, to become a new place where the city has reinvented itself. And you can see on these images, if you have a world exhibition, you can leave behind a very important monument like the Eiffel Tower or like the Glass Palace, Crystal Palace in London or Grand Palais in Paris. This is one way to build a monument. And we said we want to build an anti-monument, something which is monumental, that you have it in your mind, but is not physically spoken a monument which is very visible. Because for the theme, to feed the planet, to survive on this planet, based on sustainable resources when it comes to water, energy, food, etc., it was more appropriate to do a monument which was not more modest, but more imprinted in the landscape. So whatever we do was based on this idea of something that stays for many generations, but in a different way. We said in the first meetings, we don't want to come here and just have meetings. We said we have to do something ourselves to make this idea more clear. That's why it's called conceptual master plan. So the ideas are very clear, and also the forms are very clear. We said, think of Barcelona, Parque Güell, or Central Park in New York. Those are places which are both for the citizens, but also for the people that come from outside, that are memorable places. So something like a garden that is a garden for the 21st century. The location in the northwest of the city is known to all of you. It is a place that is between the Fiera and a cemetery, which is quite an interesting proximity. We have discovered that the Fiera has an axis of the commerce, axis of busy life, and the cemetery has an axis of silence. And all these linear axes are heading towards the center of Milan, or spilling out from the center in these very typical linear forms that you find in the Lombardian landscape. So we said we wanted to also introduce an axis in our expo site. We also said that we don't want to do a new area which is like the Fiera. We don't want to add big industrial buildings, but we want to bring urban life, small-scale restaurants, gardens, something that the place now does not have, something that people who visit the Fiera are missing, something that doesn't exist, something that you have very well in the center of Milano, but out there you don't have that. We have tested many different forms. You know, you can imagine that you have all these fantasy forms in exhibitions. And then we came back to the most simple form that cities have been built with, which is cardo decumanos. They can find in Greek cities, especially in Roman cities. And they have a great tradition, a great past, but also a great future, because they are still, it's still a very iconic, a very enigmatic form. You can imagine the long axis relating to the city center, and the other form, the other axis, related to the periphery. So both forms, both lines, have a very clear destination. The dimension that we have there is considerable. You can see in this picture that the dimension of this main boulevard is comparable to Champs-Élysées in Paris, which is a very important part of the whole city. But also Corso Buenos Aires, for you, is a more familiar comparison. That indicates the sheer dimension and the potential of this big boulevard, this big central axis that we want to create in the center of the expo. This is another example which indicates the dimension, but more from the agricultural traditions. This is an example from Holland, where in a similar way you have an axial system and attached to this fields of different cultural products. And that's how we could imagine this central axis to spread through the site. The cardo and the decumanos, attached to them are some enigmatic pieces like a theater at the end and the mountain in the front, surrounded by water. This central axis is really the central urban axis. These small lots, 20 meters wide and 100 meters large, are the different countries. Each of them have a face to the boulevard. So every country has an equal importance, even if they are different. No pavilion should stand out as being the main pavilion, but all the countries have an equal importance on this planet and an equal contribution to feed the planet. So the idea is that the pavilions should be less based on architectural vanity, but on a contribution to the central boulevard, where people would stroll, pass by, and like in a big city, go from store to store, from bistro to bistro, from shop to shop. This is a possible image, covered by provisional roofs, tent-like roofs, surrounded by water, and all the pavilions attached to this central space. The main idea for this boulevard is, of course, that we meet a marketplace, but also you could imagine a big table. People like to come together in tables. This is something that we appreciate a lot in your country, in Italy. Italy is one of the few countries left where people sit down to eat and don't stand and watch TV all the time, but they sit, they have a glass of wine, they enjoy the food. A table is not only a symbol, but is also a reality. People who sit down to eat have a different way to eat. They have a different moment of also thinking and resting, and there's a different social behavior.